The human is called to the palace by nervous guards and royal advisors. He feels nervous. He is just a simple mechanic, but the queen's eyes are full of silent trust. He examines the armor. It's not just metal, it's fused with energy circuits and alien alloys that respond to the wearer's body. Any wrong move could ruin it completely. The queen steps aside but watches silently. The room is filled with murmurs from courtiers, many skeptical of a human repairing royal armor. Tension peaks as the repair takes longer than expected. Sparks fly, strange alien tools hum, and a small mistake could end the human's chance to impress. Welcome to my channel, Starlight Sci-Fi Stories. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The human had never imagined that a simple repair job would bring him to the heart of the alien palace. He had spent years fixing ships and machines on the edge of the colony, far from the center of power, and he had always thought that his skills were enough to keep him safe and unnoticed. But today, everything had changed. The queen of the galaxy was in trouble, and somehow he was the only one who could help. Her armor lay shattered on the golden floor of the palace. Whole pieces of shining alien metal bent and twisted as if some invisible force had wrenched them apart. The guards stood around, nervously whispering to each other. The royal advisors paced back and forth. The hum of strange energy from the broken circuits filled the air, creating a tension that made the hairs on his neck stand on. And he swallowed hard and stepped closer, his fingers trembling as he reached for a piece of the armor. The metal was warm and alive, almost as if it had sensed his touch. His heart pounded as he realized that one wrong move could mean disaster, not only for the queen, but for him as well. The queen herself stood a few steps away, her tall, elegant frame framed by the grand doorway. She did not speak, but her eyes followed every motion of his hands, her gaze calm and piercing at the same time. The human had always thought that humans could never compare to the grandeur of alien royalty. But now he felt something stirring inside him, a strange mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. He knelt on the polished floor, adjusting the delicate pieces of metal, trying to understand how they had been connected. The armor was unlike anything he had seen before. It was not just a protective suit. It was a living machine responding to energy fields and neural patterns. The circuits pulsed faintly as he touched them, as if testing him for worthiness. He had to be careful. He had studied alien technology before, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He looked up at the queen, and she nodded slightly, a tiny movement that gave him courage. His hands moved faster, tracing the patterns of the armor, linking the circuits, and bending the metal back into shape. Sweat ran down his face, and yet he felt a strange calmness, as if his mind had become one with the machine. The palace was silent, except for the hum of energy and the soft mutters of the courtiers. They watched in disbelief as a human knelt before the sacred armor of their queen, working tirelessly, as if he had done this all his life. Some whispered that no human could possibly succeed. Others thought that he might destroy it. He ignored them all, focusing only on the task at hand. He picked up a thin metal strip and shaped it using tools he had never used before, but instinct guided his hands. He connected wires that glowed faintly, and the circuits hummed louder, as if approving his touch. The queen stepped closer, but still did not speak. The human felt her presence like a warm shield and a challenge all at once. He took a deep breath and tried something risky. He inserted a small device of his own design into the core of the armor, and the metal began to glow brighter. The broken edges fused seamlessly, and the energy flow stabilized. It was working. The armor was healing before his eyes, but there was no time to celebrate. He had to finish before the ceremony began. The advisors looked at each other in astonishment. They had expected the queen to summon another alien craftsman, but here was a human solving a problem that had baffled their best engineers. The courtiers whispered excitedly, some in admiration and some in fear. The tension in the room grew as seconds passed, but the human did not falter. His mind worked like a machine itself, calculating angles, energy flows, and connections. His hands moved with precision and care. He could feel the pulse of the armor syncing with his heartbeat, and he realized that the armor recognized him as more than a human visitor. It was a moment of connection between species and skill that no one in the room could fully understand. The last piece of the armor was a delicate chest plate embedded. With energy crystals, he lifted it carefully and adjusted it to fit perfectly on the queen's form. Her eyes widened slightly and a faint smile touched her lips. The energy crystals glowed brighter as, if acknowledging the repair, the human stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked around and saw the faces of the courtiers and guards frozen in awe. Even the queen's advisors seemed unsure of what to do. Their whispered speculations filled the air, but he ignored them. He had done his job. He had repaired the queen's armor. He had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. Yet he felt a strange nervous excitement as he awaited her next move. The queen moved slowly through the room. The armor shimmered under the palace lights, and every step she took drew the eyes of everyone present. She turned to him and for the first time spoke. A few words in a soft melodic tone that he could barely understand, but the meaning was clear. She thanked him with a simple nod and a glance that made his heart race. The room erupted into murmurs. Some clapped quietly. Others whispered about how a human had touched the sacred armor. Some even suggested that he had done more than repair it, that he had somehow improved it, making it better than ever. The human felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. He had never thought he would be celebrated in such a way, yet he could feel the weight of attention and expectation settling on him. His hands shook slightly, but he steadied them. The queen walked past him and paused. She turned back and gave him a look that was both challenging and approving. The human understood that this was only the beginning. The ceremony was about to start and everyone was watching. He had to hold his composure. He had to act as if nothing extraordinary had happened, even though the room was buzzing with excitement and speculation. The courtiers whispered excitedly. Some looked at him with suspicion, others with admiration. He could feel the eyes of the entire palace upon him, and yet he felt a strange calmness inside. He had faced impossible odds before, but never in such a grand stage. Never had he been part of something so significant. The armor now gleamed in perfect form, and the queen's presence filled the hall like a living star. She moved gracefully, and every detail of her repaired armor shone brilliantly. Some of the younger courtiers whispered that the human had brought honor to the queen and that perhaps he was destined for greater things. Others grumbled in jealousy, but the human ignored them. All he could think about was the sense of connection he had felt with the armor and the queen itself. It was a moment that transcended language and species. He had done something remarkable, and everyone knew it. The whispers grew louder. Some joked nervously. Others speculated wildly. The human remained silent, letting the energy of the moment wash over him. He felt a strange thrill, as if he had crossed a boundary that no human had ever crossed before. The queen's eyes met his once more, and in that brief glance he saw approval, and perhaps something more that he could not name. The courtiers began to murmur in a strange cadence, and he realized that the energy in the room was shifting from tension to something else: excitement, admiration, awe. The ceremony would soon begin, and the human knew that his life would never be the same. He had repaired the queen's armor. He had faced impossible odds and emerged triumphant. The whispers grew louder, the tension shifted into excitement, and for the first time, the human realized that perhaps he had a role to play in the grand story of this alien kingdom. The queen took a step forward, and the human straightened. His hands were steady and his mind clear. The energy from the armor flowed around him, and he felt a strange sense of pride and belonging. He had done something no one thought a human could do, and the palace itself seemed to recognize it. The moment stretched and every eye was upon him. The queen's presence radiated around him, and the room held its breath. He had repaired the armor, and in doing so, he had repaired something within himself as well. Something that made him feel capable of facing anything. He glanced at the queen one last time before the ceremony would begin, and saw a faint smile that told him that this was only the beginning. The palace was alive with whispers and speculation. The human had crossed boundaries, and the world he had known would never be the same. The armor gleamed perfectly on the queen's form, and the human felt the weight of admiration and expectation settle on his shoulders. He had done the impossible, and yet he knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The eyes of the court and the whispers of the crowd filled the air, and he took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever would come next. He had repaired the queen's armor, and the world had noticed, and in that moment he understood that he had stepped into a story far larger than himself, and the anticipation of what was to come filled the hall with a tension that no one could ignore. The ceremony began with a grandeur that the human had never seen before. The queen walked down the hall, her armor gleaming brilliantly under the lights, and every step she took seemed to command the attention of everyone present. The human stood quietly to the side, feeling the weight of the gazes upon him. The whispers had grown louder since the repair, and now they turned into murmurs of astonishment and speculation. Some whispered that the human had saved the queen from humiliation. Others wondered if he was worthy of being in the palace at all. The crowd held its collective breath as the queen approached the ceremonial dais. The human could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The energy from the armor seemed to flow toward him, and he felt a strange connection, as if the queen's presence acknowledged his effort and courage. The high-ranking court officials began to speak in hushed tones, debating what to do with this human who had performed an impossible feat. Their voices carried through the hall in a low hum that added to the tension. The human tried to focus on nothing except staying calm and composed. He had done what no human had done before, and yet he knew that the ceremony was far from over. As the queen reached the center of the hall, she paused and looked around. The room fell silent for a moment that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, without warning, a voice from the crowd shouted, "Groom." The word echoed and bounced off the walls, and suddenly the entire hall erupted in shouting and laughter. Some echoed the word, others repeated it nervously, and soon it became a chant, "Groom, groom, groom." The human froze, unsure how to react. The queen looked at him with a small smile, her eyes twinkling with amusement and curiosity. The crowd continued chanting, and the tension shifted into chaotic excitement. The human realized that everyone was waiting for his response. He felt a mixture of embarrassment, fear, and thrill at being thrust into the center of attention. He looked at the queen, who gave a subtle nod, signaling that it was acceptable to step forward. He took a hesitant step, and the chanting grew louder. His legs felt heavy, but his mind was clear. He had faced impossible odds before, and now he would face the challenge of living up to the sudden fame and admiration. The queen raised her hand slightly, and the crowd quieted for a brief moment, enough to hear the faint hum of energy from the repaired armor. The human could feel the pulse in the room, the energy of expectation and admiration that seemed to press against his chest. He took a deep breath and focused on the task of maintaining his composure and dignity. The queen began to speak in a melodic tone that resonated throughout the hall. Her words were formal and ceremonial, but carried a hint of warmth and approval. The human could understand enough to realize that she was acknowledging his skill, courage, and loyalty without explicitly declaring what the future held. The crowd listened intently, absorbing every word, and the whispers of Groom began to fade into attentive silence. The human felt a sense of pride and relief as the queen's gaze met his again. There was a connection there, something unspoken that reassured him that he had not failed. He had earned respect and perhaps something more. The rival courtiers were not pleased. Their jealousy simmered beneath the surface, and he could feel their eyes on him, calculating, plotting, perhaps seeking a way to diminish his newly found status. He ignored them, focusing instead on the queen and the ceremonial proceedings that continued around him. The ceremony involved a series of rituals that the human did not fully understand, but he observed closely, noting the reverence and precision with which each step was performed. The energy of the armor glowed brighter, as if responding to the queen's movements, and the human felt a strange thrill, knowing that his repair had restored not only the metal, but the flow of power within the ceremony itself. Suddenly, a minor disturbance occurred. A noble who had been jealous of the human's sudden rise attempted to disrupt the proceedings by stepping forward and shouting accusations. The crowd gasped and murmured. Nervously, the queen's eyes narrowed, but she did not panic. The human realized the threat and, without thinking, stepped forward. His hands moved instinctively, adjusting small energy conduits from the armor to stabilize the flow and prevent a malfunction. The noble froze in surprise as the energy around the queen remained perfectly balanced. The crowd stared in awe at the human's quick thinking and skill. Even the jealous noble seemed momentarily humbled. The queen gave a small approving nod, and the human felt a surge of pride and courage. He had saved the ceremony from disaster and earned the admiration of everyone in the hall. The chanting of Groom resumed louder than before, but now it carried an undertone of respect, and all the courtiers whispered excitedly, speculating on the human's future and whether he would be granted a position of honor or something more intimate with the queen. The human remained composed, letting the energy of the moment wash over him. He had learned to trust his instincts and his skill, and now he could feel that trust extending beyond the mechanical into the social and political realm of the alien palace. The ceremony continued, with the queen performing intricate gestures and the human watching, attentively absorbing the rhythm and flow of the ancient customs. The armor shimmered brilliantly, reflecting the lights of the palace, and the energy circuits pulsed in harmony with the queen's movements. The crowd was silent in reverence and awe, and the human realized that he was now a part of this history forever. His repair had bridged worlds, and species had demonstrated human ingenuity and courage, and created a connection that no one could deny. Suddenly, the queen paused in the center of the hall and gestured toward the human. The crowd gasped and leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the unexpected moment. The human stepped forward slowly, the energy from the armor flowing around him, creating a glow that made him feel powerful, yet humble. The queen spoke softly and placed a ceremonial insignia on his chest. The energy of the insignia resonated with the repaired armor, and the human felt a surge of warmth and recognition. The crowd erupted into cheers. The chanting of Groom became a celebration, the energy in the hall vibrant and alive. The rivals watched nervously, realizing that this human had become something beyond their comprehension or control. The courtiers whispered and speculated. The younger ones looked at him with admiration, the older ones with grudging respect. The human stood quietly, smiling, letting the moment wash over him. He had repaired the queen's armor, he had saved the ceremony, and he had earned a place of honor in the hearts and minds of everyone present. The queen smiled at him one last time, signaling that this was only the beginning of something far larger than either of them had imagined. The ceremony concluded with music and light, the hall glowing brilliantly as the aliens celebrated the restored order and the human's unexpected heroism. The human felt a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. He had crossed boundaries no human had crossed before, and yet he knew that his journey was just beginning. The energy of the armor and the queen's presence remained with him, a constant reminder that skill, courage, and loyalty could transcend species and expectations. The chanting of Groom continued outside the hall as the crowd spilled into the palace grounds. The human walking calmly among them, feeling both ordinary and extraordinary at once. The rivals retreated quietly, their plots postponed as the power of the humans' action and the Queen's approval became undeniable. The courtiers whispered excitedly, sharing stories of the human who had repaired the Queen's armor and saved the ceremony. His reputation had spread like wildfire across the palace and beyond, and he knew that he had stepped into a story far greater than himself. The palace seemed alive with celebration and anticipation, and the human felt a mixture of relief, pride, and wonder at how a simple repair job had changed everything. He had faced impossible odds, had succeeded, and had been recognized in a way no human could have imagined. The Queen's armor shimmered in the fading light of the ceremony, the Konsei insignia on his chest glowing faintly, a symbol of achievement and connection. The human walked with measured steps, feeling the energy of the palace around him. The eyes of the crowd filled with respect and admiration. He had earned it. He had repaired the Queen's armor, saved the ceremony, and become part of the legend that would be told for generations. The world he had known was gone, replaced by a larger story, filled with opportunity, danger, excitement, and wonder. He had crossed boundaries, proved his worth, and created a bond with the Queen that transcended words and expectations. The palace echoed with celebration, and the human knew that every step he took from this moment forward would be watched and remembered. The chanting of Groom faded into stories of admiration, the energy of the repaired armor and the Queen's presence lingering as a reminder that courage, skill, and ingenuity could change the fate of worlds. The human smiled quietly, knowing that he had not only repaired the armor, but had repaired something within himself, something that made him ready for whatever challenges and adventures awaited him in the galaxy. The ceremony ended, the crowd dispersed, and the human remained standing quietly by the Queen's side, ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that he had crossed a threshold that no ordinary human had ever crossed, and that the story of the human who repaired the Queen's armor would be remembered forever.